So what do you have to say about sex and disability? Hi, my name is Martha. I'm a clinical sexologist with a doctorate in human sexuality. And I am from Eros Coaching. That's eroscoaching.com. I'm also a relationship coach. And I'm available for hire, by the way, people. So in this question on the link between sex and disability, I want to say that when I went to sex school, sex and disability was something that never even crossed my mind. I think we are so sheltered, like we are only thinking about ourselves, and we are just not exposed. So we don't think about other topics relating to sex. So when I went to sex school, sure, I know about people who are gay, but I didn't really understand about people who are lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning. Like I didn't really know about these different kinds of sexual orientation, because you have this like just take things for granted. And nowadays there's this big conversation around white privilege, like white people have privileges that they take for granted. And similarly, I think like people who are straight, we kind of take things for granted, like life is easy for us, like, you know, we just assume everyone is straight, and we don't realize how we make things difficult for people and challenging for people who are different from us. And it's really important to be respectful and to not make other people feel bad for who they are. But anyway, when I went to sex school, then I started to understand other topics such as sex and aging, sex and illness, sex and disability. So these are some of the other topics that I came to be aware of, and really started to ask myself, like, what's going to happen to my sexuality as I got older, and what kind of role models do I have in my life to look forward to. So in sex and disability, I want to say, like, for people who are disabled, you don't want to just think about physical disability, people who can't maybe confined to a wheelchair, maybe had spinal cord injury, who can't really touch their genitals, for instance, who also, or maybe because of that injury can't really feel. Doesn't mean that they cannot get pregnant, okay, for instance. So certain things like that, like people don't really know about sex and disability. However, what I want to say about sex and disability in this video in particular is actually the sexual rights of people who are disabled. If they don't have a partner, are they allowed? Are they encouraged? Are they entitled to seek out the services of sex workers? So just like any person who has sexual rights or sexual needs, if they don't have a partner, how do they feel? They don't have to, but how do they feel about seeking out the services of a sex worker? So what actually happens in Australia when I started to go through my training as a sexologist. So I learned that in Australia, they actually have like a union that actually provides services for for people with disability, like sex workers who provide services for people with disability. And it's called touchingbase.org. And then there's this famous documentary of a sex surrogate in Australia. And this documentary is called Scarlet Road. And you can find it at scarletroad.com.au. And that's quite interesting. And it's not true that all sex workers are willing to work with people with disability just because they want the money. It's not true. And it's also not true that just because they're sex workers, they know everything. They don't know. So they are not necessarily trained to support somebody with disability. And it's also not true that people who are disabled are willing and want to seek out the services of sex workers because of all this stigma around like sex workers, and also like a fear of sexually transmitted infections, and like, you know, this is when their values and morals comes in. So this stigma goes both ways, right? Sex workers not wanting to see clients who have disabilities, and people with disabilities not wanting to see sex workers. So let's not make certain assumptions about it. So sex surrogates are people who basically use their bodies and their skills to teach their clients certain things. And sex surrogate doesn't just apply to people with disability, of course, also this applies to people who are able. And I get asked this a lot, which is, do I know any sex surrogates in Singapore? Do I work with any sex surrogates in Singapore? Answer is no, I don't work with any sex surrogates in Singapore because I haven't found any. I haven't found any that I trust, I feel is good, and who has the credibility and credentials. I don't just want to use a sex worker who doesn't have the skills. I want the best for my client. And so what I do is I still work with my clients by educating them, by teaching them skills, giving them home assignments, but I don't work with any sex surrogates, just to answer that question. So yeah, so if you're somebody who's watching this video who has a disability, you may want to check out this website called surrogatetherapy.org and see if you can find a sex surrogate who can actually work with you, teach you skills so that you become more comfortable with yourself, with your body. And if you are thinking like, I have a disability and I don't really know how to express myself or how to behave around like another human, and this is when you can work with somebody who's comfortable and trained and not have to feel stigmatized. There were a few times in my life where I thought it would be great if Singapore would have such a service, but as we can see, like, even though sex work is legal in Singapore, it is legal. It's not unionized. A lot of sex workers that we have in Singapore are illegal. I'm saying there are legal sex workers, but there are illegal sex workers, and they get into a lot of problems with the police and like raids and all these things, and it's quite scary for them. So anyway, I'm sidetracking. So Singapore doesn't have this service. That's what I'm saying. So this is Martha of Eros Coaching. I hope this video has given you some things that you didn't know about, and I would love to hear from you, your thoughts and comments. And if you have a particular question, like for instance, like relating to your country, whatever it is, just ask me and I will look for resources and information to answer your question. So this is Martha, and you can find me at ask@eroscoaching.com.